So talking about astrology as fortune telling, many grapple with this issue, especially spiritual teachers who want to help their clients. They might like astrology, but they're hesitant to advocate it because it feels like it's mentally enslaving. But in fact, it's quite liberating when it's done correctly. So check this out. Okay, so I'm making this video about something that I've noticed online quite recently, and you know, it's probably been going on for the last couple years as Vedic astrology becomes more popular and more people know about it, especially in spiritual communities and even like new age and new thinking type of platforms. People are trying to bridge the gaps between it at being like a superstition and still honor it as something that can be valuable and, you know, keep it revered as a Vedic science. And this is something that I noticed actually even about a decade or more ago when I did my yoga training. In particular, there are many yoga teachers and yoga gurus who have a real hard time with astrology. Literally, like yoga is one of the Vedangas, one of the limbs of the Vedas. And I remember when I did my yoga teacher's training many years ago, and since then, going back to that ashram for study and practice and even to teach, many times the swamis themselves didn't, quote, believe in astrology. They were skeptics. And what they weren't believing in is actually not even astrology. They didn't believe in the usefulness and the efficacy of making predictions and turning over your will to astrology. See, this is what they were protesting. And they thought, as many think now, that astrology is some kind of fortune telling, right? And this is the thing that the scientific community and people who don't really know what astrology is always go back to. They always go back to this because they don't understand what it really is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. And I'm actually going to share this video in some places where I think it can be helpful. And these are places, and I'll encourage those who are watching this video to do the same thing. When you see well-meaning people, and I mean people who are doing their best, who are trying to speak about astrology in a dignified manner, but are cautioning against the fortune-telling part, maybe share this with them, because I understand what they're saying, and I push back against the same thing, by the way. I try to encourage my clients and my students who are learning how to do astrology. You know, I have a lot of students, usually more than 100 full-time students, to get out of the mindset that you're learning how to be a fortune teller. Now, that doesn't mean you can't understand what's going on with someone. You actually can. And you can really help people because you can know what's in their mind. And that's actually much more important than making predictions. And what winds up happening is, again, people wind up focusing on this prediction part, mainly because this is how it's been used and misused in India, especially, and also in the West. People think, well, astrology has not been proven to be more effective than just making an educated guess, because they're looking at astrology as a predictive tool, as a kind of psychic tool. And people say, well, then what is it if it's not for that? Well, what it is it's the study of the universal forces in life. The planets are not just rocks moving around up there, emanating influences. So, for instance, one of the things that I've seen with one of the spiritual teachers, he's a Swami, and one of the things that Swamis would say, and people would say who are trying to give it a scientific legitimacy. I mean, they're literally trying to legitimize it they're not trying to look down on it. They're saying, of course, these objects moving around are going to have an influence. They have gravity, and they do this, and they do that, and they're trying to honor it. But they don't understand that what these bodies are have nothing to do with gravity and all of that. That's their physical appearance. In the Jyotish texts that were written by rishis, people need to understand this. These are not just, human beings that wrote this. These were, and by the way, not just written by rishis, but you yourself, when you enter states of higher consciousness and you connect with the energy of the planets, you will feel the truth of that. Again, the planets themselves are the facets of the divine mind, of the divine consciousness. It's stated right in the Vedic astrological texts that Lord Vishnu himself has incarnated or has emanated and come forth as the 9 planets to bestow on the living beings the fruit of their karma, to establish dharma and truth, and to destroy ignorance. So what this means is that the truth of your karma is held in the planets, and when you are born, your evolutionary and cosmic path is shown when in the message, if you know how to read the message of the birth chart. If you know how to read it. If you don't know how to read it, then you don't know how to read it. But this is just like someone who can read music or who can read another language. But let's use music as an example. Have you ever seen the movie Amadeus? You ever see the scene? It's a fascinating scene where Salieri, who was the other composer, finds Mozart's manuscripts. And he looks at the manuscripts. And as he's looking at the manuscripts, you hear music. You hear music playing, which is basically his capacity to look at to look at notes on a staff and hear music. Just like you read words on a page and have comprehension, a composer or a musician can read notes on a staff and hear the music because they know how to decipher it. When you get very good at astrology, I'll say like me, because that's what I've done, I've read a lot of charts, you might say I hear music, but what happens is I feel what this is. It mixes to the ratio of what's going on. As I look at more and more connections, it goes deeper and deeper, and then I'm describing something that I'm seeing at this point. I'm not just grappling for a couple details here or there. I see a picture, or I understand a dimensional, maybe psychological profile, and I'm not grappling for what it means, okay? I know what it means. I'm just describing it. And I'm describing it correctly, and I know it's correct. I know what I'm saying. Just like the room you're sitting in, if you look to your left, there's an object sitting there, and if I asked you to describe it, you could describe it. It's green, it has a couple knobs on it, it's framed in blah blah. You would just describe it. What a good astrologer does is basically describes something in a vivid, detailed, accurate way, hopefully, if he's well trained, or she, obviously. And what they're doing is describing your karmic pattern, your karmic habit. Not making a prediction for you that's going to try to solve your life or fix your life. What they're doing, and what the planets are, is they are the keepers of karma that shows your karmic habit, your karmic tendency. It's really like, I call it habit gravity. There's a gravity to your habitual way of seeing things. You have a tendency to see things. That's what karma is. They're also called samskaras. They're deep mental grooves and habits you're used to loving in a certain way. You're used to expressing your anger or frustration in a certain way. You're used to being inspired in a certain way. You're used to speaking in a certain way. It's your karma around the different planets. So what a good astrologer does is he can see that in vivid detail, he or she, and then they're just explaining it very like you would explain something that you're looking at. And then they also link it up with something like the timing cycle that's happening and this thing moving and influencing, and then they describe that, and then they describe that, and they're describing. They're a witness to something. Many times that witness gives the person, the client, enormous peace, because people come to astrologers, or they're living their life and they're very attached. It's like if this was if this was my life, right? And I'm seeing my life through this glass, and my nose is right up against it, and you can't see anything. Like if it's this, you see this thing says new leaf. If I have it here, I can see it, right? I can see it if it's here. If it's here, I can't even read it. It's too close to my face. And this is the way we live our life. We're so close to everything, we're just going like this. We have no perspective. So astrology gives altitude and detachment, and someone is witness to what we've been through, what it means, focuses us on the higher outcome, the higher potentiality that we can't see because we're so attached. They don't try to tell us what to do. They don't make up our mind for us. They clearly illustrate the moment in time that we're living, the urgent moments that we're now going through, what our tendencies are toward difficulty and beauty, and how to greater align so that we take the actions that bring about what we're really trying to unfold, and what the challenges are and what's obstructing it. And it's totally liberating when it's done correctly. It's extremely helpful, extremely liberating to put things into perspective, where we've just been, what the moment is right now, what's bearing down on us, what's challenging us, what the highest potential is in these moments. Perhaps what the likely outcome is, but that's usually the least important part. And then it can also, filter down into specific things, like if we're with a partner, what are the positive and negative qualities of the partnership, or this or that. It can definitely get into those specific things as well. But again, astrologers at best do not try to solve people's problems for them, literally make predictions that lord over a person. That's simply not what good astrology is about. What it does is it increases our understanding of who we really are. And we need to understand also that when you know the nature of karma, you understand again that karma itself, as we experience it, is always something from the past framing and shaping the present. And no one can accurately know what another person is going to do. You never know 100% what someone is going to do. That's why it's not even important. What you can know, though, 100%, is what the choices are the person are grappling with, and illustrate those things in vivid detail. Meaning, it's less important that I could explain to you that you're going to choose this over this, you're going to choose this job over that job. The least important part is that I get the prediction right. The most important part is that I empower you to understand why you would want to choose this over this, and why this choice represents something that's maybe safer, but not as in line with your dharma and purpose, and this one is something that's riskier, but is really the thing that you want to do, but you're afraid to step out, or whatever the things are that we're grappling with. And so one of the problems that happens is, astrologers also have egos. And you'll see that there are astrologers who, their whole focus is to try to impress clients with, I got this prediction right, I got that prediction right, everything's about my predictions, I'm going to make a bunch of predictions. There's nothing wrong with that, and again, everything you say in a reading is a prediction, basically. It's just what's the prediction? When I draw out the choices that a person has before them, that's a prediction. I'm saying these are the things that you're dealing with because they didn't tell me, I'm telling them. Nobody told me that. I'm the one who said, here's your nature, here's what you're dealing with, here's the things that are going to be in front of you that you're dealing with. So nobody told me that. I had to predict that. And what's not that important is that I get it right as to which one the person is going to make. I can see the ratio of what they're likely to do, and I'm just there to draw those things out for them. Now here's the other thing as well. Clients are always pushing me to make those predictions. I'm constantly going, look, it's not that important that I predict what you're going to do. Does it really matter if I predict and get correct that, well, I think you're going to make the choice that's safer, and then 3 or 4 years from now, you're going to realize that you wish you had done this one? Is it really important that I make that prediction and get it right? I'm telling you what the choices are right now. Is it really that important that I predict correctly or not that you're going to stay in this relationship that makes you unhappy for another 2.5 years, and then when you go into this cycle, you'll break it off and blah, blah, blah. So I let them know the timing of those things. I let them know that these are the choices they're dealing with, and that right now they're at a crossroads where this could happen or that could happen. But I'll even have people say, you know, because I explain to them what the karma is, because that is the karma. That's the choice and the actions they're presented with at any given time. And I explain them very well, and people will say, but what do you think I'm going to do? Even after I'm totally empowering them and I'm not lording over them with predictions, they still pester me. But which one do you think I'm going to do? Does it say which one I'm going to do? And they'll say, well, okay, well, can you see, like for instance, if it's about a relationship and I'm looking at the compatibility, they'll find a whole bunch of ways around it. I'm trying to empower them, and they'll say, well, what about in the partner? What about in the chart of this partner? Do you see that they're going to do it? That they're going to be with me? So, again, as much as people might want to blame astrologers for this, it's often clients that pigeonhole and push astrologers into being fortune tellers. So the bottom line is this. Astrology is, at its heart, something that increases manifold our understanding, not just of why we're here in general, specifically, each individual, but why we're here overall. When you study astrology, especially when you study it, not just get readings, it's actually something that we're meant to study. And back in the enlightened times, people studied astrology because they were studying the nature of the cosmos. This is why it's something to study. This is why my whole life revolves around teaching it more than giving readings. Because people are supposed to know this. We're supposed to know why we're here and what all of the cosmic energy is that created everything. And it's very clear that that's what astrology is, something we're supposed to study and know. And so that's why I teach it more than anything. But when you do a reading, you're first explaining those cosmic energies to everyone. And you say, look, the reason you get angry, you know, your anger is actually it's a frustrated sort of discipline, that nature of Mars. Anger is not your full possibility. It's the limitation. It's the limited ego veiling your courage, your purely courageous nature. Because you're lacking courage, you're frustrated and angry. What you're really trying to do is unlock the courage to make yourself strong and not be so frustrated, for example. So when we understand what astrology is in its highest sense, then when someone gets a reading, or when someone, looks at their life or some life situation, they see it in a higher context. And that's what astrology is, especially in this modern world. Teachers like myself, this is what we are doing with astrology. The actual origin of astrology first was timing for sacred ceremonies and all that stuff. But as it became natal astrology to help people understand themselves as individuals, what's called horoscopic astrology or reading birth charts. It really became something of a study and something that people, ancient priests and Indian, especially in India, the astrologers were like the sort of priests or the ones who would help people navigate their karma, and there was a lot of remedies and stuff. Again, a lot of those things are a little bit arcane at this point, although some of them are used. But the real usefulness is not in lording over people with predictions. Most astrologers don't do that so much. Some of them do, but it's often clients that go to astrologers to try to get predictions and try to help them figure out their life. And what a good astrologer will do is empower you. They will be able to explain the karma and the inner conflicts that you're experiencing at any given time so that you can act with more courage, strength, intelligence, and so that what you would call your free will is actually free. Because most of us, our free will is not free. Most of us, our free will is bound to our tendencies and our habit gravity and our, what you would say, karmic pattern, our karmic tendencies. And when an astrologer can explain what that karmic tendency is, then we can act in many ways with freedom for the first time, rather than just using what we might call free will, which is actually just our bound energy, and try to push and struggle and fight. Most people who don't understand astrology or consciousness or awareness, they act with very little free will. Almost all of it is just, they're like a programmed animal. So again, I really appreciate how much people who are conscious and who are, involved in things like yoga and higher spiritual pursuits do their best to honor astrology by honoring it and glorifying it as a science, but who are cautioning against relying on it to fix your life and fix you, and cautioning people from, turning over their attention to an astrologer. But you should understand that most good astrologers, that's not really what we do. That's not what I do. Like when I hear people explain it that way, people who don't practice it, and again, many people who don't really know what astrology is, but they're trying to answer questions about it because their followers aren't sure either. What I hear these people describing is not what I do at all. It's not really what astrologers do. We're not just acting like a sort of prediction machine. We're actually trying to open a person's frame of reference so they have more options, more understanding into their nature, and therefore more choices, and what we would call more capacity to act with free will. So if you see videos where you see, gurus and spiritual teachers talking about these themes, share this video with them. Share this video with people when you hear them saying, well, astrology is da 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 da. Especially things like, well, it's not proven, scientifically, sound. And you hear them talking about it as if it's fortune telling, or you hear them talking about it like, well, I kind of like astrology, but, I don't want to be, have some astrologer tell me what to do or figure out my karma or whatever. Share this with them because I think it would help. That's why I made the video.